let me do this. Okay, we are recording. Okay. Will BJ Rob, that's a double entendre. That's so funny. Like, as I was typing the email to you, I was like, does he intend, like, there's a kind of outlawishness in this, like, is this a question, And I'm sure people ask you that before, but officially, welcome to 540. Really appreciate you taking the time. And man, I'm just so tickled to have this conversation. It feels like we have so many intersecting lines with what we're trying to be about out in the world. So when Battlebird told me about you and what you're up to over there, and then I was like looking, oh man, I gotta talk to this person. So thank you. And the way we usually get set off is like, so this is what I often will say is, when you're at a dinner party, which hate to be triggering because I know no one's been at a dinner party in a while.
Like, remember those?
You know what that used to be? And someone says, what are you all about? How do you respond?
Whew, let's see. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to remember even like a dinner party.
Well, even your intro. You told me your intro. I liked that.
I mean, I've got, especially like as I do my thing now, a lot of the ways I start, it's like, I go by BJ Robinson. I'm a Black, queer artist, educator, musician, workaholic. I come from a big family, originally from New Jersey, and have been in San Diego a little more than a decade now. And I mean, the best thing about me that I can say, or like to kind of explain me, is that I still have that Northeast pace of keep busy, time is money, and that keeps my gears turning fast, which keeps me going as a private voice teacher, currently as a choir director over at Christ United Presbyterian Church. I do music direction. Just before pandemic and all hit, I officially got my Actors Equity card and joined that union. So I like to just keep pretty busy with my arts in different manners. And then it just got busier as, it looked like the world was going to slow down for a moment, March, April. But what didn't slow down was all of that wonderful hate towards Black people and communities of color. So I found a new way to activate myself in creating the Tough Talk platform, which is my own series that brings people to come together to practice getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, as I like to say. Just getting into complicated, difficult, and sometimes, just hurtful or not harmful, but hurtful sometimes, you could say, painful conversations about many different things that we're all trying to change, that we're all trying to gain understanding on, and then figure out how we progress within ourselves and within the world around us.
Oh man, that's beautiful. So many things in there to unpack. I appreciate that. I appreciate that table setting. So maybe we'll take a reflection back, like how it came to be here, and then I will unpack some of how you just built that characterization of yourself. So why San Diego? What even brought you?
Was in Jersey all my life. Jersey boy, originally Camden, so near like Philly. I always say Philly, South Jersey is how I described it. And then one town over to Pennsauken for a number of years. Went to school up in North Jersey, and while I was at college at Montclair State University, my dad, he was working for a government that contracted with or a company that contracted with the government a lot. And they had him flying out for different places, and he came out to San Diego a few times. I think my parents came out together in 2007 as a vacation at one point, and my mom fell in love with it. So the family ended up moving out here.
Got it.
So then around 2009, I was at a crossroads of, do I try and either just like relocate into New York City? Do I go back down to South Jersey? My parents suggested just like come out to San Diego for a bit, take a breath, and figure out what I want to do. So 2009, June, I headed out here thinking, all right, I'll be here a little bit to just reassess my plan. And then I kept busy. I got a job at the Sears. I enrolled in some different music classes to just keep myself going. I ended up getting a job at the college as a teaching assistant. I ended up getting a choir job at a church in Hillcrest, and you
Got
know,
it.
here we go, still
Oh,
here.
there it goes. And that's it. That's it.
Ball got
That's it.
rolling.
That's it. So how would you contrast that? So, we touched a little bit on it, left coast versus East Coast. Everyone has their characterization and vibes and whatnot. And San Diego, even on the left coast, is its own kind of like thing. So how have you experienced that as kind of an East Coaster, but then also, Black Lives Matter on top of your head there. People have a lot to say about Black life in San Diego too, as a town where often you don't find too many natives and people come in from all sorts of places, military lines and things, and it's sometimes, I know, challenging for folks to find their spot. So how has that been for you?
Man, it's been all over the place, I gotta say. When I moved out here, and again, it was that mindset of thinking I'm just going to be here a little while. Part of me wanted to indulge, I would say, in what I always believed to just be the laid back SoCal vibe. I mean, I also admit I spent a lot of my life in New Jersey where we would make jokes about California because we'd always hear about California. And when we were growing up, our standardized testing were the CAT test, the California Achievement Test. So in our heads, it was like California has like a scholastic achievement level, but then they also have Arnold Schwarzenegger in Hollywood. So it was like we had a lot of different ideas about what it was going to be like to come out here, and I remember at first I was terrified, thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm moving to San Diego, like what the heck am I going to do with myself?
Yes.
And then it was a little bit of like, okay, this is nice. The weather was great. And I first moved to East. Let me get that right. Yeah. Like Eastern Chula Vista.
Okay.
Near San Miguel Ranch was the area as I was in, so just past Eastlake.
Okay.
It was very diverse, and I mean, when I went to set on foot on Southwestern College, it was one of the first times that I had seen a campus in real life that was more of color than it was white.
Wow.
So for me, that was like, this is nice.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
There was a different sense of like,
Yes.
I'm gonna like it here, and that definitely had some like allure.
Oh, that's dope. Okay,
Yeah.
so you felt like, oh, it was a switch in the other way. You
Chula
really,
Vista was really refreshing for me.
yes. Wow.
Because New Jersey was always mixed, but it was always mixed, and most places still had predominantly white culture, predominantly white people. So that was still just a thing. But when I had that experience at Southwestern College, it was like, wow. I mean, I ended up staying at Southwestern for 8 years. I taught there for like 15 semesters, 14, 15 semesters, something like that. So I really loved the environment. I loved everyone there, and I felt supported and heard, and it was great. As I started venturing out of Chula Vista, it was a very different scene.
Got it.
And that became very apparent, I mean, immediately. And it's easy for me.
How so? Like, what stands out for you when you think about that?
I experienced a lot of what I can now define and really like see in context. A lot of tokenism.
Yeah.
As soon as I was out of Chula Vista.
Yeah.
A lot of the, I mean, my name on paper is William Robinson Jr. And so a lot of the, step in a door and it's, you're William.
Oh.
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Funny enough, these were also a lot of the same people who, when I would eventually try and tell them, call me BJ, they'd say, well, I'm just not comfortable calling you that. And choose on their own, they're going to call me Will or William.
Oh,
and it's like, okay, I see who you are. You may not see who you are, but I see who you are. And then it was really a lot of just the give and take for myself on when am I going to put up with it and when am I not.
Wow. Now, why would people be uncomfortable? It's funny, like, It's funny. When you put this song,
It's interesting. It's interesting when we get the
yes,
Southern thing on it. It happened to be a lot of older white people
yeah,
who were surprised that I was William and
mhm,
then preferred to call me by William as opposed to BJ.
mhm,
And with enough of them, when we
mhm,
finally had moments of I guess I would say really carefree conversation,
yes,
some of them would finally make the joke of something just like, well, that's just such an inappropriate name. Or like, well, do you really have people call you that? Did you choose for people to,
yeah,
and when I would even explain to people that, my dad's William and always went by Billy. My
yeah.
older brother is Willie and went by Willie. So my
Oh,
family always called me BJ because it was Bill Jr. and it just made sense.
right.
Um,
Yes.
a lot of people still wouldn't believe that. Really? Really? I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize my personal history is questionable. Like, that's cool.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
Um, and what I really came to see with it is that it I mean, it's a part of what can easily be described now of kind of just upholding all the different
Yeah,
white
no.
supremacy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
merits and
yeah,
characteristics of like, well, BJ is an improper name and
yeah,
William is more acceptable to everyone.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
we're going to
yeah.
call you William.
I mean, what we're really touching on, like, there's all kinds of like gender and sex norms and all sorts of interesting things up in there,
All
right?
kinds.
So all sorts of taboos and stuff. So,
Yeah,
so you are a church person.
I am.
So talk to me about this. So how has that journey been? So take me through that a little bit, and then
Yeah.
also how you landed and how you define and speaking to the queer label.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about that journey for you.
Um, we were raised we were raised in the church.
Yeah,
Church has always been a part of my life.
yeah,
There were even at times I remember in like my adolescence when
mm,
my parents wouldn't go to church all the time, or some of my siblings wouldn't go, and I kept going on my own.
mm,
Even
mm.
through college, I found jobs working as a choir singer. So I've always
Black
had
church,
I've huh
black church.
No, actually,
Mm.
Christ United Press is my first black church, which is really exciting.
Okay, okay, okay.
Originally, Saint Anthony's in Camden, which was a Franciscan Catholic parish,
Got it.
mostly Hispanic,
Oh,
and it was still a very traditional Catholic church,
yeah,
Latin at times, but then also Spanish Mass
yeah.
as well. And
You
that's
speak
really where
Spanish?
I even like found my voice for singing. I mean, just singing in church. I remember doing Christmas concerts. My dad and I would both participate, and he'd sing with the adults, so I'd sing in the kids choir. Um,
Yeah.
then I was an altar server for a number of years, a cantor a few
Yes.
times.
Yes.
I was a reader at a lectionary a number of times. So
Wow.
I've always had church in my life.
Yes.
I still have way too many, that's not a complaint at all. But Christian and religious faith oriented songs that I remember learning in kindergarten, first and
Yeah,
second
yeah,
grade
yeah,
that I
yeah.
still sing and I still
Yes.
teach. And
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
got most of my books of the Bible still memorized because of these great songs from these like Bible songs on tapes, things that we grew up
Yes.
with.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yes.
so I've always
Mm,
had a strong connection to
mm,
faith, and
mm,
that's been something that has certainly always
mm,
guided me.
mm.
um,
Yeah.
you know, even through my just discovery of my own identity,
Mhm.
there were certainly times where it was almost maybe more prodigal son esque of like,
Yeah.
okay, I got to figure some of these things out for myself, and I don't think this is going to fit into everything happening here, so
Mhm.
I'm going to go figure me out. But I've always come back.
Yes.
um, you know,
So that's what I'm curious about. So, as a person who has sought to create safe spaces for faithful folk who don't fit, or at least are told they don't fit in some
yeah.
of their faith systems of origin,
Hmm.
I'm curious about that part. So, you know, I came up in kind of like Southern Baptist turns, a little more kind of standard white evangelical settings.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say, I was baptized Southern Baptist in the hand, clapping, foot stomping sense, and then, white Irish Catholic mama, like, some of that. I think it was a little more comfortable, like a Nazarene church, which is where I came up.
Yeah.
The youth group that I came up in. And then later, I was here and we spent some time at the Episcopal Church, kind of high church, Anglican smells and bells and all that. And I came to a different appreciation for some of that ritual and liturgy than my roots, which were much more evangelical and praise and worship, hands in the air, and this kind of thing. So my relationship, my spiritual relationship, is very much kind of framed in evangelical terms. How then? What knits that to you? Is it the ritual? Is it the smells and bells, like I say, and some of the rhythm to it? Or, how would you describe some of the metaphysics of it? Like, why you think you keep coming back when your siblings maybe didn't?
Yeah.
And then how did you, did the identity piece, was there a true departure or a point where you had to kind of go like, okay, this isn't friendly for me and I need to make some decisions, or I'm curious about how that went.
Thank you for asking all that. And I can say as like my disclaimer for the record, I think at this point most of my siblings are back at going to church in their own ways and faiths and paths. So, so they're not sitting here thinking like I'm hating on them. Not at all.
I got you. But love to the siblings if y'all
love
watch
to the
this.
siblings and all that.
No shade, really.
Right. Everyone had we were all busy during high school. It's all cool. We all got our own roads. There were combinations of things for it. One thing that definitely, one of the things I remember learning fundamentally is that when you're lost, the first person who's going to help you find anything is going to be God. And that's always stayed with me. I can't remember not knowing that. Because I remember, especially as a child again, learning and understanding power and strength and beauty and salvation in faith before understanding suffering and sin, and trial. And so
got it. Foundation.
Like that's been the core of it. That's at the core of it. I mean, I can just, anytime that there's a moment where I've ever just felt absolutely hopeless, or I'm, even when I was younger and it would just be like, I'm crying, I don't know what's going on or anything like that. It's like, I know that I come to that place of resolve a little bit, taking a few deep breaths, and then just like really reflecting in and channeling into God. And breathing and questioning and thinking through and finding a way forward. I know it's happened a ton of times. And it keeps happening every day, which is great. And then the other side of it, I guess I would say two other sides. So the next point in there would be, I've always been drawn to music. And the more I studied music, the more I understood not just how much music and the church itself came together, but music and just the inner strength of faith and progress, and how music and even just, if we think of it of like oral tradition have always been so tied together. One of my most favorite genres, if I had to listen to one kind of music for the rest of my life nonstop, I would be absolutely content listening to Gregorian chants endlessly. Because there's such solace and strength in that music for me. And so that's when I was in college and really started studying music history and got to really learn even more of that genre extensively. It just kind of reinforced my own strength in my faith and in my connection to faith in my own presence, especially through that power of music. And then I can say I bring it fully forward to within my practices as an educator, as an artist, as a music director, and especially as a choir director. I'm all about building uh, environments and opportunities and access that I know would have aided me when I was in need, and that I feel was not a part of the standard when I was around. Like, what are the new possibilities I can add to that? And like, I get to put that into practice, for example, with the church choir. The choir has a policy right now that it's completely open for everyone and anyone to be a part of. There's no mandatory commitment. There are different ways to participate, whether it's just remotely and sending things in or meeting up with us when we have our weekly sessions. You don't have to be a full member of the church. And there's even flexibility on what you get to sing and how much you have to contribute. And it's all, for me, aimed again around how can I carry out my own intention and mission on having environments and organizations where all are truly welcome. It is not a matter of judgment. It's not about having to meet standards to be good enough to be here. It's about coming as you are. That's something that faith has always reminded me, and it's one of the things that I definitely am so excited in this capacity of having. It's my first time finally having my own choir, and as I've told like pastors, to tell everyone there, it's like I literally have been saying, like, when I have my choir for the last 15 years of my life. So it's like I'm so focused on getting to implement these different practices and attitudes, and remind everyone that, like, this is the best place to do it, because we're a music ministry. We're not here to be the best. We are not here to be the greatest. We are not here to do anything that's upholding expectations of standardized supremacy. It's really about meeting the mission of being as open and inclusive for one and all as possible. And if that means what ultimately comes out of us is something we still define as imperfect, then that is its perfection, because that's how we achieve our mission.
Who preach? Come on. Come on. So tell me then. So talk to me about the identity thing, the queer thing. I'm curious about. So even as a person, you know, as a flag carrying, radically inclusive human being, I'm always curious about how people have come to that particular label, how they.
Yeah, definitely. Because I'll say queer is a fairly new label for me. For a long time, I identified as a gay man. Before that, I identified briefly and only privately as a bisexual man. There was a lot of pressure around me at that time to not believe in bisexuality.
Yeah, I know. There's I get it, man. The tribes,
yep,
all the tribes have their own preferences. Yeah.
And so I definitely conditioned myself into saying, like, well, then I just must be gay. And then that just became, again, it was one of those things where it became just easier and simpler almost. I knew I was not meeting the definition of straight. So it was like, fine, if I just say I'm gay, well, if that's just easier for everyone to digest, then that's what it's going to be. You know, with all of that, when I was a teenager, I tried dating, and I was not very successful at attempting relationships, or whatever I thought they were at that time. But I was still good at being able to engage with different individuals. And so that led me to, at times, engaging with individuals who were already in what they were calling committed relationships. And so I was self-identifying as a homewrecker, and often just a third party kind of thing, you know. And it was weird. That kind of built me into a place of having a revelation where I came to understand really like before I was even 18, that any sort of traditional relationship may not be something that's going to work for me. And that I don't need to aim for that. But what my intention would be for myself, my priority would be to try and build strong levels of companionship with people. And I for like a decade, I would say I was in a committed relationship with my music and my career, and that I was only interested in, you know, seeking companionship outside of that. Of course, once I started doing that, there were a couple of times where I got into some relationships with a couple of different men. But I also remember saying to them, even in those relationships, that like music comes first and you will come second. Spoiler alert, neither of those worked out.
Yes.
And then it would have been years. Gosh, it was like, I don't know, maybe a good like three years before I engaged in another sort of relationship. But that was really built on this transparent communication around companionship, not looking for labels and all of these other traditional expectations. And funny enough, the whole thing was very non-traditional because the guy that I was engaging in this companionship with was in a committed relationship with another person in what they defined as an open relationship. The fast forward on that is that the three of us all got to know each other really well. And actually, after having this companionship with the one guy for on and off of like 4 years, his partner didn't necessarily pressure us, but kind of had a moment with us where he's like, you know, the two of you really should identify as boyfriends at this point. And so we were both we had this talk of, we literally don't want anything to change, but sure, if you want to change the label, great. If that's easier for people, we'll change the label. So we changed the label. It eventually became the three of us being in a kind of equally committed open relationship we called a triad, because people also called it a throuple, and we hated that word. And then and then now, gosh, almost 2 years ago, did that third person, the boyfriend who told us to like become a triad, decided that he had a change of heart and a change of feelings. And so over, you know, a process, we split back down to just being the two of us, me and the guy I originally connected with. So it's still the two of us together. You know, and it still is. Otherwise, everything else is the same.
Yes. So then, why? So what does queerness encompass for you?
So, thank you. I was like, where was I going with all this?
No, it's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate you sharing.
One of the things that me and my partner Sean have talked about is that throughout both of our lives, we both identified as bisexuals at times, and then again, gay just kind of worked in a sense of a go with the flow, and this is what it is, whatever. Just strange how much taboo was around like bisexuality for so long, and still is to a point. But then as I started my Tough Talk series, you know, when that all started, it was just after my activation, and that really came just after the murder of George Floyd. I had 6 days of this ended up getting a little biblical, and it really wasn't intended to be, but it did. But I decided I was going to start having some protest sit-ins on Zoom, because I, like many others, was way too angry and wanted to do something, and at the same time was way too terrified of being outdoors because of the virus. And I still don't go many places because of the virus. So I started holding a Zoom room open for people to be able to gather in the Zoom room and sit in with the people of Minneapolis when their curfews went into effect. And so we did that for 6 days straight. And
like
then
your room literally was open for 6 days.
Well, we kept reopening it every night for.
Yeah. At the time of curfew, yeah.
So it was like I'd open it, I'd advertise it. It was open for anyone to join in and put it on Facebook, and we had like 50 to 60 people coming in across the country every night to be able to just sit for an hour.
Wow.
We sat mostly in silence with just musical reflection. At the first night, we just sat in silence with musical reflection for an hour. The second night, when I saw people were going to keep coming, I asked a friend, Pastor Megan, over at Westminster Presbyterian Church, if she would mind just speaking and gathering and giving like a few words. And so she did that, and I shared a poem. And then the next night she couldn't make it because I think she had like a Bible study meeting. And so then I took it upon myself to just try and impart a little bit more words of inspiration and just kind of reflect on where are we at a few days after this. It kept going, and by the 5th day, I knew it wasn't going to be enough to keep just gathering. So on the 6th day, I announced that we were going to start actually having a conversation series. And the 7th day was the first Tough Talk. And then we kept it going, meeting twice a week, every week, June through the end of November. Sometimes we met 3 times a week. And at first it was to just focus on amplifying Black voices as leaders of the conversations to help people gain understanding about the Black experience. And it was talking about Black Lives Matter and everything from the hashtag to the foundation to the global network to the movement, to defunding the police, to understanding more about the intersectionalities of being a part of the LGBTQIA community and being Black, to amplifying Black women, to amplifying Black men, to amplifying the experiences of Black families, or how Black people are portrayed in the media. And through the different focuses and conversations I was doing, one of the things I've always said is that we all have work to do. You know, we all have education. We're all called to be educated as well as to be educators. And through that, I started having, I was doing some of my own reflection on, I need to change some things about the way I say things. I need to change things about, just how I carry myself on some of these ideas and perceptions, about how I approach others and how I react to others. And I also started acknowledging that I need to come to a little bit more fuller and comfort terms with who I am in my own identity and expression. And that I needed to really think more on what is it for me to live my own honest, unapologetic life. And that's where it came into, I need to reclaim my whole identity as a queer person, because I don't just identify as gay, and I don't necessarily just identify as bisexual, but I know that that's all a part of where I'm at, and that I'm still figuring it out. So that's where queer kind of was like a light bulb to me towards the end of last year. And it's literally in like the Tough Talks where I had a revelation that I think I had said that it's like, I'm going to start identifying as a queer man, because that really is who I believe I am. That's what I feel is more right for me than to continue to just say I'm a gay man, because I don't think I'm just a gay man.
How was that received? So in the same way that in gay spaces to say bisexual sometimes is like well, you're not really, you're either all the way in or you're not. To say queer then and kind of obfuscate the definition, how has that, where has community shown up for you or not as a result?
So I would say for the most part, as far as I am informed of, because I can only speak from my experience and what I know, it just kind of washed over everyone, no big deal. There was only one instance that it was brought up by someone. And it was really interesting because it was very recent. We were having a focus on understanding the words
Mhm.
and the intentions
Mhm.
of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there was an older person,
Mhm.
white person, who brought up trying to understand their challenges in trying to understand changing vocabulary in this world. And one of the things I reminded them of, and everyone, was that, Dr. King, in that great interview he gives in '67 for NBC, reminds everyone to reflect on listening to younger people and younger voices and younger generations on what are the changes that need to be implemented within society.
Mhm.
And that especially holds so much weight to vocabulary,
Mhm.
that it's the younger voices who are going to redefine what our vocabulary is, what our vernacular is, and that's a part of the change we need to go with.
Mhm.
For this person, they were reflecting on when they were growing up, queer was considered like a slur, and that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
couldn't say
Yeah.
queer.
Yeah.
And at the same time, for them, Negro
Yeah.
was okay.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were commenting,
Yeah.
it was fully around the fact that, like, we're in a time now where we don't use Negro
Yeah. Yeah.
unless we are specifically referring to something from an era
Yeah.
when that vocabulary is
With
used,
these, yeah.
which helps us to identify that
Yeah.
era.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I had brought up, I think, in that same meeting,
Yeah.
how in 2017 I had an experience with someone within the church, a white individual, who asked very nonchalantly to a whole group of diverse people, when did it no longer become okay to say Negro when referring to a black? And I remember just kind of walking away in the moment, because it was one of those things of, I'm tired and I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah. I
And
don't have
everyone
it.
else in the room had a big enough reaction that I knew, like, they're going to handle it, and I don't need to do this one. But it was just this, like, oh my goodness, are we really having this conversation in 2017 kind of moment? And then this person in 2021 had that same genuine question. In 2017, I knew part of me was thinking, like, I don't know if this fool's just being a jerk or if they really mean it. Whereas in this year, I knew, like, this person's asking, and they're literally in my tough talk space to ask.
Yeah.
That's what I told him to do. I told him,
Yeah.
come to this space
Yeah. That's what this is for.
to
Yeah,
voice
that's what
it.
this is for. Yeah.
And so I was really grateful that they did, and it was such a just, like, mind-blowing experience of, this is the first person who's actually brought up this point. And at the same time, I knew, like, this is not the first person who lived in that same era with those experiences that has come to all of this. And so I found that even neat of, it got me thinking on, I wonder how many people have come into this space and have not said anything, trying to just accept what I'm saying and not question me, and it was one of those things of, like, I'm so grateful that they asked it, because I'm sure it's when you're a teacher, someone asks a question, you're thinking, like, there are at least
5 other people had the same one. Yeah.
So it's like, great question. And there were some other people who approached me after that meeting and were even like, are you okay? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for checking in, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is what I want, because I want us all to practice getting comfortable with these uncomfortable things, including the people who want to have a reaction of, like, you can't say that. Well, if they don't ask it when they're supposed to ask it, then how are they going to learn?
Yeah, that's the whole point, man. That's like so much of what I'm about, because I kind of go back and forth between spaces where we really, really, really need to recognize where damage has been done, and folks need a little space to breathe. And, there are kind of some third rails, if you will, at times, right? Like consciousness. But then also, a thing I often say is, I don't know if you get into Enneagram stuff. I'm an Enneagram 7. My wife is an Enneagram 6, which is essentially diametrically opposed. Like, I'm a leaper and she's a looker, right? Like, she's all about safety. I'm all about risk. And I say, for two folk who feel so differently about so many things, to still commit, have kids, pay bills, and laugh so much, like, if that can happen, and why can that not be extended across our various lines of intersection and difference and find middle ground? Now, people often push back saying, well, that's a romantic thing. Like there's more going on there that's keeping you all together, you know, and maybe there's some water in that, but man, I feel like if we take it out of that context and just look at the harmony all around us, there's so many analogies and metaphors we can use for how difference gets along, like interacts and cooperates.
Oh yeah.
What partnership might look like. But this concept of being able to hold two opposing ideas together in space, equitably, safely, harmoniously, man, I mean, I salute and just respect the endeavor to try to do that. I would say, you know, that comes up in this house. I got a 14-year-old, an 8-year-old, you know, we hear cuss words and things like this. The whole conversation around language, its use, its intention, the energy behind words. I've been saying it a lot around like the N-word. You know, my daughter's a quarter Black kid, right? And she's like, Dad, do I have the N-word pass? And I'm like, what's the N-word pass? You know what I mean? Like, she's like, well, my friends talk about the N-word pass and all this stuff. But I'm like, shoot.
I love that they call it a pass now.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to get a token, you got to get a ticket, you know? And, but it's funny, you know, I used to do little open mics at like the Claire de Lune way back in the day.
Yeah.
And I think I had some commentary around that. Like, you know, I have some knuckles, you know what I mean? Like some bridge, like the word, that word is so wrapped in care and affection and accord, you know what I mean? That like this concept of having taken an epithet and reclaimed it and recrafted it, you know what I mean? It's almost like, you know, whether it's biblical text around turning weapons into plowshares or something like this, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, there's deep truth in there somewhere.
You know, your sword can be a sermon or the power of a pen in that. And I'm right there. Like growing up, if anyone was ever coming up to me, oh, what's up, Matt? I'd be like, no. You can call me by my name. You know, I was class president at the time. I was like, you can call me Mr. President if you want. And if you can't figure out anything else, you can call me sir. But I don't need you refer to me as your N-word. And now I'm certainly in a place where I acknowledge the power for some in it and can respect the intention. And even at my times, find myself now actually using it and realizing like, wow, I have a totally different way of seeing this. And like, I get it.
You know. So anyway, I do appreciate that. Now tell me. Then we had a like whole conversation there on queerness and your challenge or wrestle. I don't want to say challenge, but your journey there. How do you know? So take me along. You know, I was telling you before, like masculinity, spirituality, faith, or race. You know, how does that stoop come together for you now? How do you feel most embodied? Where are you? You know, doing most of your work or your growth, or like I'm moving from here, trying to educate on this thing, or growing myself. What's your?
I'm kind of. So I feel like I'm doing my workaholic and pumping out all over.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
That's real.
Particularly, let's see. I mean, I'd say in my last like 3 to 5 years or so. Particularly as an educator, I've been more and more about understanding how much of an example I am. You know, when you're a Black person, you're already an example, whether you want to be or not, because that's the way the world works right now. Being a Black musician, even more so in San Diego. Being a Black musician from the LGBTQ community, even more so. And the more I kept branching out, the more I kept understanding. You know, again, when it was in Chula Vista, it was just kind of like, I'm just another shade and I'm good with it and this is great.
Yeah.
When I started at All Saints Episcopal Church in Hillcrest, it was like I am one of two black members in the choir and one of six in the congregation. So like,
Which one
all
is
right,
that?
all
Wait, no,
right,
wait. All Saints, not the cathedral. That's St.
no.
Paul.
St. Paul's is the cathedral.
Yeah,
All
that's I used
Saints
to
is
go
the
there.
smaller one up the street.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Across from where the Ion Theater was when that was still there. It was like right on a corner, Pennsylvania and Sixth.
It's closer to the city, right? Is it south?
It's on the southeast corner of Sixth and Pennsylvania. There's like the antique lamp place that's across the street from it. It's before you get to Balboa Park on Sixth Avenue. So it's like it's
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Okay, got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
But like one of less than a dozen black people there when I was there for the 7 years that I was singing at that church.
Wow.
When I went over I started doing some freelance work at University of San Diego with the music ministry in Founders Chapel. I was often the only black person working in all of the music ministry. I might end up being the only black person that would be anywhere on the altar between anyone participating in the services. Which again, it's like, that's okay. It was more of acknowledging and understanding where I was fitting into a lot of things with it. And the more I was doing that, the more I knew I was already meeting the levels of the standards of professionalism being expected of many. And at the same time, the more I was realizing I was being tokenized in some of those places, not all, but in some of those places, the more I started to have just that fire brewing of, I need to be a little bit more me right now, and that's gonna happen, like it or not. That's really what it came out of, like, is gonna happen, especially because the whole time while I was still teaching and working at Southwestern College, there was never a pushback about me being if I came in some sort of different outfit for a day, there was never a question of it. If I picked out, I remember picking out music that I was even thinking, I'm like, are people going to be okay with this? I don't care. And it really became like, I'm just going to do it until they say I can't. And the more I did that, the more I kept realizing, like, oh, I actually have room to spread my wings. In 2016, am I getting that right? 2016, I got a job hosting a TV show for KPBS called KPBS. It was called Spectrum at the time. It's now called KPBS Arts. It's all about arts and culture across San Diego and across the country. And I knew how unconventional I was going into audition for that job. I mean, it was this journalism kind of hosting thing, and I showed up wearing like bright blue pants, a bright green button-down shirt, and a yellow and navy blue polka dot tie. Like I was doing me because it was like, I don't know what you want. And I remember walking out of that whole thing thinking, like, there's no way I got this job because I literally was I was me, and I wasn't trying to like put on what I thought was professionalism or anything like that kind of thing. And they hired me, and in that journey, you know, I remember being clear from the get-go of like, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to be like I'm not looking for some formalized controlled wardrobe. I'm not going to have some like perfect makeup team. I'm going to do me. I'm going to use my clothes. I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to need you to take me as I am. And there was a little bit of work in the first season or so of like, okay, I'm going to do some of these things more my way. I'm going to do some of these things their way. And it was kind of that back and forth. And what was really fantastic after that first season is that the overall feedback was, we want more of you. We want more of you just doing you. I'm still hosting the show. And I mean, like, I get to throw my 2 cents in on the writing. I get to, I style and design myself and wear whatever I want with every episode, and no one questions it.
That's such a cool thing.
It's really exciting. There's been some episodes where we aimed to just like focus on highlighting arts within San Diego. And I always get to have my input on like, okay, you know, one thing was like, I want to bring this show to a theater in North Park that's like a shoebox of a theater, the North Park Vaudeville and Candy Shop. And we went and did an episode where we got to spotlight them and filmed everything there. There was another time where it was like, I want to go down to Southwestern College because they're doing Godspell and they're doing it in a bilingual presentation. So we went down and shot a whole day's episode on the college and interviewed a bunch of the students and staff. And it really has been like the great gauntlet for me to keep practicing, like, who am I and what do I want to do in this? And it's like, and for me, I'm like, if I get away with this on a TV show, then I'm doing this everywhere else. You don't like what I'm doing? I'm going to tell you, go watch my TV show where I get to do it. Okay.
Yes. This is so funny. You know, I was just showing the kids yesterday Dave Chappelle's interview on like the Actor Studio, where dude was talking to him and he was breaking down like, every Black person in America is bilingual. There's street vernacular, and then there's job interview. And he was just talking about this code switching concept, you know what I mean? And I often get grief around here because I'll come off the phone with Uncle Brian. Who are you talking to, Dad? Like, why are you all blackity black? Like, you know?
I mean, all our lives. I can't too many times as a kid. Why you talk white? Why you dress white? You know what? Yeah, why do you talk like us? I'm like, excuse me. What? Like, no. I promise you, I'm not trying to be any of you. Like, I'm doing me.
Yes. I love that phrase about being free to spread your wings and just going and do it. I remember I had an interview too once, which was just after a real challenging situation where the fit was all wrong and I was over it, you know, and I went into the interview like, you know, all the locks off, you know, and ended up getting the job. But they actually had me go to HR. Like the vice president was going to hire me, wanted to, but was like, damn, this dude is too comfortable. Like, can you check and just make sure he's okay? Like he's actually not like off in a way that I can.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, so then tell me, you know, like, as you said that, you said something about who I am and what I want to do. So as you stand here now and I look at your IG and I do see Tough Talks, I see the KPBS and you're leading choirs, you got your own choir now, like 3 to 5, like where do you feel the most juice? You said you're pressing on all these spaces, but what's like the fire? What's feels most present in this moment?
I would say my most prioritized focus.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like with the church choir, as like pastor hears from me every week when she's like, "How's everything going?" I'm like, "It's great. Like it's great. I've literally been preparing for this job all my life. So like, I'm sleepwalking in a daydream right now." And so there's still definitely an absolute without question focus that's fundamental on the church choir, but it is not at all like the toughest thing I'm having to do right now, which is also a blessing in itself. I know too many people who do not love their work, and it's just a challenge to stay at it. Where it's like, ooh,
come on,
I love it. I love what I'm doing my work. So my other like pressing focus, especially like 3 to 5 right now, is on trying to help San Diego, especially the San Diego art scene, reflect on itself and its community and its actions thus far, and try to restore some healing intentions that actually create greater respect, representation, and equitable inclusion practices in our community. Because I've been out here a little more than a decade, and especially as I've plotted all around, from being in educational institutions to nonprofits, to private work, to churches, to public schools, to acting, to instrumental work, to music directing. There are a lot of the same practices that are extremely problematic and harmful, and that I see pushing and shoving people of color out of San Diego.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it, and I know too many people that it's gone on with, that I'm still in touch with, who are no longer in San Diego because they had too many issues, and they needed to find another way in their path forward, which I respect and totally support, and they're a part of why I'm focused on trying to clean up my community.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. You know, my daughter just got into the San Diego School of the Creative and Performing Arts. We have a little singing, dancing little girl down here, so we're really happy about that. And I just posted something with regard to the vital importance of creatives in our society to uplift and highlight the beauty and grace-filled nature that life can often have. You know, and so thank you for doing that. I'm conscious, you know, I'm this biotech dude. This is the third largest biotech hub in the country, and there's all this opportunities for STEM stuff. So I do the same thing kind of in the STEM space. I'm trying to highlight and accelerate representation. And so when I think about the Playhouse and the Old Globe, and I think there's like a bunch of different community theaters and things like this in this town, you know, not to mention the you know, like the other visual arts and things that can go on. I'll be watching. I think is what I'm saying. I'm saying thank you, and I'll be checking in to see what's happening.
Awesome.
But man, I gotta pivot. I gotta go get my vaccine.
I know, but that's okay. That's a good thing.
So thank you, impromptu, for taking the time to rap and share your light with me as you do with such vigor elsewhere. I'm blessed, man. You have a beautiful Friday.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for this opportunity. This is fantastic. And so please have me back whenever. I'm going to have you on Tough Talk, clearly, because that's how we do.
Come on. That's all I want to do. That's all I want to do. Yes.
I know. I'll be emailing you later today on that.
Okay. Let's connect, man.
Yes.
Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You as well, man. Thank you so much.
Peace.